This is my conversation with Aagie, who started out as my tour guide and interpreter while I was in Mongolia. And as you'll see from the video, we became quick friends. We cover everything from tourism to identity, alcoholism, drinking culture, all comparing the old and the new of Mongolia, the past generations and the new generation. So I hope you enjoy it. I apologize in advance for the funky camera angle. The camera fell sometime before we hit record, and I didn't notice it till afterwards, but I think you'll be pleased with the content, and I hope you love my chat with Aagie.
I am feeling really inspired about the topic of the generation gap, the division between the older generation who was raised in a socialist community government opposed to the younger generation in a democratic society. Simply put, the baby boomers versus the millennial and Gen Zs. I feel like there's so much hate against each other at the moment. We're just not coexisting at all. It's so against each other.
How does that show up?
Very simple example. I don't need to sound smart or anything, right? I can just,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, no, just keep going. You're
Okay.
good.
Then I'm not going to hold myself back.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that version of you.
So Facebook is a big thing here. There's recently been a topic in discussion. Facebook is like that here. We come up with a topic or a subject, and then the whole country is debating on that. There's a lot of divisiveness going on. The recent topic that we're discussing right now is how the older people on buses, whenever they come onto the bus and see a kid sitting on the chair, they are immediately like, "Get the fuck up! I'm supposed to sit on this. Respect the elderly." So it is very much connected with the culture and the respect towards the elders and all that. The way I see it is in a perfect society, the older generations are the ones who are supposed to pass down the knowledge and the experience and what the history, but also accept that things change. Every generation is different. New times are coming, technology, the internet. I think the older generation should just accept that their way of life is
Changing.
changing and it's probably never coming back, and have an open mind towards the younger generation. But for the younger generation, we should look up to our older generation. We should ask questions. We should maybe not follow them blindly, not follow them blindly, but, ask questions. Why things are the way it is now? What exactly made this happen, right? Even the simple topic of traffic, the horrible traffic. Did it, how come we're
Mhm.
dealing with this right now? What did
Mhm.
you guys do wrong? How can we learn? How can we make it better without hating them and
That's really
learning from them?
interesting.
And then actually helping the older generation adapt to new things instead of, you're so old, you're so done, why don't you just, die?
I never envisioned that scenario in my head as a solution to both modern problems and preservation of culture. But
Mm.
that, I mean, in theory, that would be really beautiful if the
In theory,
younger,
yeah.
yeah, if the younger people were like, wow, grandma, this traffic is intense. Tell me about how you saw this. How did we get here? How do you see how we got here?
Mm.
And then have a conversation, and then the older generation going, yes, grandchild, what do you foresee as a potential solution? And like literally coming together to create what's next.
Yeah. So in theory, yes. But what's happening here is we're not allowing any communication between each other. For example, when CU came in, the convenience store, the Korean franchise came in, it was one of the companies that started hiring younger generation kids like rapidly. So, a college student working at CU is the thing now here, right? And you can see that. So kids who started working at CU, they started not complaining, but there were viral videos on Facebook of an older generation coming in and literally just talking down on the service staff, on the kids, and harassing them verbally. physically, throwing shit at them you know, and we see that a lot. So just walking in the street, you feel that. What I'm trying to say is before we even start talking to each other, we just block it. We look at the person. If they look above 40, 50, we just build this wall where, from the younger generation's perspective, there's fear. We fear the older generation of what they're going to say to us and how they're going to react. And also creating another problem in the hiring industry. People who are running businesses, they're already like stable businesses. They're owned by the older generation, right? And they need to start hiring younger people. There's so many cases of, hiring younger people, overworking them, not paying them enough, not paying on time, treating them like shit. So therefore, the younger generation have no respect, let alone learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
No respect, constant fear, caution, that.
Well, there'll probably be no motivation either to
Exactly.
preserve traditional ways of living if the people who represent that treat you badly.
Yes. Seems like from the older generation's perspective, they see younger generation as lazy, as whiny, talking about, what are you talking about? Mental health, depression, ADHD, bipolar. What the fuck is that?
Mm-hmm.
We don't care about that. Our parents used to beat us. We turned out fine.
Mm-hmm.
Mongolia as a country, we're very behind on the mental health issue. We still beat our children. I'm sure people my age had stopped, but I mean, I experienced that growing up. My boyfriend experienced that growing up, and we're just understanding now that that's not the right thing to do at all. That creates so many problems later on in life, right? But when we try to raise this, and the government, from the Mental Health Institute and all these organizations try to do campaigns on this and raise this topic, you can see in the comment section, you can see the older generation's attitude. It's like, we turned out fine. If you're saying we turned out fine, that means you didn't turn out fine, right?
That's so true. Oh, that's so true. And this is such a dangerous setup for whatever's next, potentially, because you've got a whole generation, a new generation that feels so bitter towards how their parents raised them, that, physical abuse. And then now you're talking about current abuses in the street. And so why would they be motivated to preserve any of that? Because it would be triggering for them. And
Exactly.
then so you've got this impasse. If your country's anything like ours, the older people run the show. And so then you've got this clash of the old wanting things a certain way and disregarding the new perspective, and then the young disregarding the traditions that could also be helpful. Both could be better, could help for whatever's next. But
Exactly.
instead, you've got everyone on their separate sides.
Yeah, that's what I keep trying to say. If you want to change a society, if you want to fix things, if you want to build things, you need people on your side, especially the younger generation.
It seems that Mongolia is going through a lot of change right now. And so this would not be a good time this would be a good time to come together.
Yeah.
Because like tourism, for example, when I think about places that become hot tourist wise, there's a lot of positives and negatives that come with that. We'll use Costa Rica as an example. Before Costa Rica was like the hot place to go, it had a lot of, especially environmentally, there was a lot to offer. And there was a lot of impact from an influx of tourists that maybe they weren't ready for. I don't know the details of it. I just know when I go to Costa Rica now compared to what I hear people talk about going to Costa Rica in the 90s, they were like different places. I'm like, what are you talking about? There's North Americans everywhere. There's, popular North American franchises. There's like a Pilates place and a yoga place and surf instructors and American companies buying up real estate. And yeah, there's pros and cons to that. So you working in that industry, you must feel that more sharply while observing the generational gap and kind of looking ahead.
Yes. So the government, the ministries, they decided that in order to bring in a new wave of tourists, they started partnering with Nas Daily and all the influencers that he worked with,
Can you
right?
explain Nas Daily? Because I don't know if everyone knows.
I believe he's a content creator, and his concept is he fits everything in 1 minute or 90 seconds, 60 seconds, and then he travels to these countries, and then he does highlights in 60 seconds. I think that's it. So our Ministry of Culture, they partnered with Nas Daily, and it came in as a package deal. And then you see all these influencers coming in and doing all these reels and content, and that is attracting a lot of attention. And sometimes because these influencers, they don't always have the time to research and the history. They're just focusing on quick content, right? And sometimes they're highlighting things that shouldn't be highlighted, that shouldn't be exploited. You know, when you're doing content for views, you're gonna do things that attract a lot of eyes, right? But tourism is just picking up now, and we need to figure out things inside first. But so basically we did the opposite. Instead of building the bricks, we
Instead of
started
creating
painting
the
it.
infrastructure. Yeah. That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
When you say they're creating like the wrong kind of content, what do you mean?
We're gonna go deep in this. So Nas Daily recently, he did 2 reels that really pissed me off. One was he did one reel on the honorary mother medal thing, and the second was how men here, they eat a lot. They eat a lot,
Okay.
and being fat and overweight is attractive to Mongolian women because it proves that the man can provide and protect the family, which is making us look very primal. And that is just not, it's not correct. It's factually not correct. And I think he touched on male testosterone, of Mongolian men having the highest testosterone in the world. That might be right factually, but the way he showed it was just, it made us look
Barbaric.
Yeah. And that honorary mother medal thing, that is very much from the Soviet era. I mean, it didn't, I'm sure it didn't start in the Soviet era, but giving out medals is a very Soviet thing.
Yeah, explain that because my listeners won't know what that means.
So I've seen a similar thing with the presidential medal in the States. So it's that, but there's so much more of it. There's so many different types of medals, and the presidents give them out, or the prime minister gives them out. People in the art industry get it. There are 2 ranks of it. Engineers get it. And I mean, it's great to appreciate people for what they do, right? But when that medal it doesn't represent, when it doesn't represent appreciation and respect, why are you giving them out for?
Oh, so explain the mother thing specifically.
Yes.
So it's for how many children?
So there are 2 medals for honorary mothers. If you have 4 children, that's the second rank. If you have 5 and above, that's the first rank. That started in order to increase the population growth back in the 1990s. I might have to check, but I think it started before the 2000s. Our population is growing rapidly. By 1950, it was only 500,000 people. Now there's 3.2 of us,
That's
3.2 million of us.
That's
right?
such a boom. Yeah.
So that worked back then. Appreciating mothers and giving out medals. I think it comes with a cash sum. I don't want to say prize, but like, you heard about it and you were surprised, right?
Yeah.
It's such a weird concept.
Well, yeah,
Isn't it?
it's because it's a medal. Like it's that part is unusual. Like in the US, there are social services for struggling mothers, and that started after the war, but we don't have like national recognition for people who give birth.
So exactly. That's what we talked about the other day too,
Yeah.
right? There's no support system for struggling mothers. There's no support system for single mothers. There's no support system for female, working mothers, let's say. There's no infrastructure on adoption. You're giving out medals to women who are giving multiple births,
Hmm.
bringing children into this society, but you don't have any infrastructure or whatsoever a support system after the children is born, neither for the mom, neither for the baby.
And that's interesting because you were just saying that about tourism. It's like kind of the same outlook. You called it
Yeah.
painting the bricks before we make a thing out of the
Yeah.
bricks. It sounds like it's the same sort of order of operations.
Yes.
Let's just get as much as we can
Mm-hmm.
and then figure out the infrastructure
Yeah.
later. So going back to Naz Daily, what did he say about the medals for the mothers, particularly that you felt was wrong?
No, I just felt like it was very exploiting. On his content, he doesn't necessarily give his own perspective. He's just stating the facts or whatever, right?
Mhm.
He's highlighting them. I don't have anything against that, but what I'm trying to say is Nas Daily, it's not like he was interested in Mongolia himself and then he came here voluntarily and made content. They're working with the ministry, therefore the government. So the ministry they need to talk about it. So basically, what I'm trying to say is when you're going to make content, you need to, if you're getting paid for it, you need to run it by the ministry, right? You need to talk about things. Are we okay on exploiting this subject? Because we as a society, we're so conflicted on this. Some people think, oh, what's the big deal? It's appreciating mothers. It's such a beautiful thing. But then the younger generation is, well, you have no support system for the kids nor the mothers, then why are you giving out medals?
Mhm.
It makes us look very much behind as a society.
And social media that's like the way it works, which sucks, is it's that kind of social media is designed for short,
Mm-hmm.
highly consumable content.
Yes.
There's no room for nuance. There's no room
Yes.
for education. There's no room for long attention spans. It's all
Yes.
about getting that short-term attention span. And obviously I'm partial to podcasting, but I do feel like that's one of the powers of podcasting is it can be used to explore that, but it also is designed for audiences that already have an appetite for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it is hard to get the people that are doing the 6-second TikToks to come to the dark side of podcasting and sit and listen. And it can affect, as you pointed out, not just the mental health of the people consuming content, but it can impact the mental health of the people who are being portrayed in those pieces.
Yeah. Me as a tour guide, I feel passionate about these things because I'm the person who's explaining everything to a foreigner, right? And I don't lie. I stay away from that. I don't sugarcoat things. Our company tried to stay away from that. Instead, we try to say it how it is, talk about Genghis Khan nonstop and how much of a great empire we were and how fastly growing the city is, how fast we're developing and all that,
Yeah.
Because if you do that, I mean, those are still like educated people and there's, they're going to come in and they're going to see it themselves. They're going to walk, they're walking through the streets and they're going to have questions,
Yeah. I mean, do you ever feel the push and pull of tourism? I mean, I have loved this week with you because you're so passionate and so honest that I feel like I am getting something real, when I listen to you. And I can't wait to share this beautiful place, like this interesting, contrasting, beautiful place.
Yeah.
But then I also worry, well, what will happen if it gets really big here? Will it become like Disney Worldified?
Yeah.
That's not a word, but you know what I mean? Will it become Disney?
Mm.
Do you ever think about all of that?
Yeah. One of the main reasons people decide to travel to Mongolia is the nomadic lifestyle, right? And the nomadic lifestyle is still very much part of our life. Half of the population is still living in a nomadic way. So, it's not for show. So people come to experience that. I feel like people come to experience that nomadic lifestyle, those open, vast lands, the solitude of it, and the simplicity of it, and the beauty of it. And our culture is so rich, our history is so rich. When I travel with clients to, vast steppes, it looks empty, but there's so much history behind it. That's the beauty of it. We work on people's imagination. But when there's so many tourists coming on like tour buses all at the same time, I feel like
You freak out a little bit
I
inside.
freak out a little bit. I get anxious when we're approaching like a monastery or a
Yeah.
temple that is in the mountains that is supposed to be quiet, like we did the other day.
Yeah, and like 40 people are exiting a bus. Yeah.
A meditation center that is supposed to be quiet.
Yeah.
And
A
'cause
real meditation center. It's
Yeah.
not, I think that's an important thing just for context.
Yeah,
Like, it's not
exactly.
like this is a replica. No, this is like a real place.
It's a meditation center. It's
Yeah.
an active monastery.
Yeah.
And tour guides should carry a lot of responsibility on, do a disclaimer to your clients. Let them know before entering that this is a meditation center and you need to be quiet and respect the place, right?
Yeah.
But then there are these, people who arrive in tour buses and they're treating it as like a museum and not even a museum, like a park,
Like
it's
Disney.
like they're loud, everybody's on their phone and everybody's, making content. And they're missing the beauty behind it. And that gets a little frustrating.
Yeah. And it can, it can go a bad direction. It's a double-edged sword that kind of goes back to how we started this conversation about the old and the young coming together in order to plan in a thoughtful way. How can we embrace what's new, share our culture, and I think tourism can be a way to preserve culture if it's done correctly. But you don't think so?
I think so. I do think so.
Because I think it celebrates it,
It does.
and it, for me as an American, very disconnected from whatever my ancestry is, right? But being in a place of people who are so connected to their ancestry, I find that it creates more thoughtfulness within myself about who I am. And that's a precious gift.
Yeah, for sure. I've thought about this for a while, and I think the more young generation people start working in the tourism industry, especially as a tour guide. Oh my God, I thought about a whole system, right? If college students could, as tour guides, improve their English, they would be obligated to learn the history and the very important landmarks, also temples, which we have many of them, the religion, the current state of the country, then that would be just great, People would younger generations would look back into our history, because now when you talk to younger people, their knowledge on history is very low. But tour guiding could be a very good opportunity for people to learn about the history.
It's brilliant.
Yeah. And when I'm traveling with clients, I always shift my perspective in order to feel what they must be feeling, to see it as what they must be seeing. So that's a very good shift in my head. And I look at things that I've been looking at hundreds of times, and I try to look at it from a different perspective. And I see, that's a very different angle. That's very new. Maybe if we did this could improve. So it opens up a whole new perspective. That could be a really good connection between younger generation and history and through tourism.
I love that. I feel like every time you and I talk, we got an idea. We're going to take over the world. And we just met on Monday, boys and girls.
Yes.
That's awesome. I love that idea. Yeah. You could create like a place where the young people, in order to have this nice little source of income, would have to listen to the older generation to maybe
Mhm.
teach, and then the older generation would have to be nice
Yes.
to the younger generation. And then the older generation would be witness to the younger generation learning and appreciating. You know how
Mhm.
you can see the click in people's
Yes.
eyes?
Yes.
And it could be like a peacemaking.
Exactly. I yes, exactly. Because I didn't know much about history before becoming a tour guide. And I've learned about the history of the current older generation, right? And I started feeling so much love towards them. And I started understanding why they are the way they are, you know? Things have been hard for them. Things have been so different for them. They actually have been through a lot. That's where that's the Soviet era. After the revolution, the Russians came in and basically took over our country, and there's been genocides and all that. So the older generation have definitely been through a lot, and if the younger generation learn more about that, then we will start understanding why they are the way they are. And maybe one of us needs to start showing love first, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, someone has to get on the dance floor first.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's the younger generation who should do that first. Because let's face it, the older generation, they're stuck in their ways, you know. They just need a little bit of appreciation and respect and love.
Yeah, I mean, there's mutual benefit there. Going back to the mental health part of it too, there could be healing on both sides.
Yeah. When you said that, I just remembered I had booked an appointment with my therapist, and it was my first session. I was waiting in the waiting room, and before me, they were just coming out. Before me, there was this man, and he looked like he was in his 40s, and he had an appointment with the therapist with his dad,
Wow.
who looked like in his 80s, and he's wearing his del and the Mongol shoes, which is he's clearly from the countryside. He still lives in the countryside, and they're coming out of an appointment with a therapist. And I
Wow.
was like, wow. And I was sold. I didn't change therapists.
You're like, "Just book the next 2 years out, please and thank you.
Yeah,
I'll be
and
here
my
every."
husband is going
Yeah,
to her now.
that's amazing. That's so amazing.
That was so eye-opening.
Yeah, because if she can navigate whatever issues the 2 of them have, then you're like,
Yeah,
"Oh, my life will be simple."
exactly. Because therapy is a fairly new thing here.
Like, how new?
Like, I'm even one of the few people among my friends who go to a therapist.
Really?
Yes, it's
Hmm,
a very new thing.
hmm.
Very much new thing. Booking and demand is so high that all the good therapists, they're booked out for 2 months ahead. And which is raising another concern of, quality therapy sessions and quality
Oh,
every
yeah.
single
Oh, yeah.
session.
Anytime there's high demand, you're gonna have a quality
Yeah.
issue, but when you have a more discerning public, because the conversation is more allowed and less taboo,
Mhm.
then people can exchange notes, and on a
Yeah.
very grassroots level, you can control the quality by the conversation that you're having
Mhm.
publicly.
Mhm. Yes, exactly.
With that, I mean, I don't feel like we can talk about mental health without talking about substance
Mm.
abuse
Mhm.
and alcoholism and sobriety. In the US, we're seeing a big trend towards sober living. Like
Mhm.
people, like there's podcasts about it, there's
Mm.
YouTube channels about it. In practical daily life, I'm not seeing a lot of options because sometimes I want the ritual of drinking, but I'm like, this is just going to make me tired. From a utility perspective, I would like to be awake for this conversation. So,
Mhm.
and I'm like, so you have any non-alcoholic drinks? And there still aren't many other than, would you like a Coke?
Mhm. Yes.
So, what's the scene here with the old attitudes versus to alcohol versus the newer ways to alcohol?
The old way of alcohol is very much Russian style. So the older generation people, they drank bottles and bottles of vodka in one sitting
Hmm.
in order to talk business. in order to get intimate someone, there's always been alcohol involved. It's heavy drinking. And there is a national issue of us losing people to alcohol constantly, and it's still happening. I hear, my husband's friend's friend, a person he knew, recently just went to sleep and never woken up because of alcohol, because of liver damage, alcohol poisoning. And it's still going on among 30-year-old people.
Wow, 30?
Yes. So people in early 30s, they have these heart issues, liver damage, alcohol poisoning. Like alcohol ruins everything inside you.
Yeah, it's
And
poison.
it's poison. Yeah. So that's the old way of drinking, which is still going on. But then again, the younger generation, the people who are a person who's turning 21 was born in 2002. Let's start with
I
that.
was fine until you just said that.
Can
Now
you?
I'm gonna have to go drink. No, I'm just kidding. It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing.
So
I graduated high school in 2001.
So the newer generation, it's changing. Oh my God. There's no like slowly adapting to a new thing. It's bam, new generation. They come up with a totally different style and totally different design of things, right? So now you see these younger generation kids who just consume alcohol in the right way. They're having a drink or two just to, have fun and maybe loosen up a little. And they're more interested in what band it's played. There's playing, what the design of the music concert is, and who's there, and is the music good, and they're so aware, and they're such responsible drinkers. And where the older generations, because as a society, as a culture, we're so passive. We don't share a lot of, which is another reason of the mental health aspect. We don't share things with each other. We don't talk about our emotions. We're very stoic people as a culture. So alcohol is the only tool to loosen up and really talk to someone, or release emotions. Get angry with someone, let them know that they got disappointed 10 years ago by them, that they felt something 5 years ago and they just kept it inside, and it bottled up, and it comes out with a bottle of vodka. So that's been changing.
What about the role of alcohol in identity? Because you shared something with me the other day, and I'd love for you to share it again if you're okay with that, about the traditional sussing out the potential husband ritual, like where the father-in-law talks with the fiance's best friend and they drink a lot.
Yeah.
And when you told me that story, I'll have you tell it again if that's okay,
Yeah.
'cause just to provide context. But when you told me that story, the first thing I thought of was like, oh wow, that's like a sign of manhood.
Yeah.
And then that makes me think of identity and how confusing it would feel to the thing that allows you to have an identity is killing you, and how that would be so, like, you'd feel lost without it.
Yeah. That story is a custom of, not all Mongolians do that. We still have different tribes within the country, and also at the same time, different people from different provinces, they have their own customs that have been passed on generations before them. There's a custom in, I think, a Western area. If a man wants to marry a woman, he needs to ask her hand in marriage from the dad, which is like that around the world. And they do a whole ceremony. And if you translate the ceremony word by word, it means asking for the bride.
Okay.
So during that ceremony, the guy needs to bring his best friend with him. And the future father-in-law of the bride tests the groom through his best friend by pushing him to drink a lot of vodka. And if he still stands after a certain amount, which is a lot, then it's a reflection of the groom, then he means he's like a solid guy.
That sounds very Russian.
It is. It is.
So, okay, so how does that contrast with, let's bring it back. Let's mind travel from the western part to where we are now, which is
Yeah.
in the city. And when I think about Japanese culture drinking, it has to do with work, and it's like also drinking, seeing how far you can go, but it has to do with like
Oh,
business deals. Is there that?
I was gonna say that. So it's not only the asking for the bride ceremony, it's in every like aspect of work, for example. One of the things that frustrates me a lot because I have to negotiate with people a lot, usually with men, I can just tell that unless we sit down and, share a bottle or go out and smoke with them, things are just not going to go through with this guy. I can see that. And sometimes I kind of envy my husband because in the music industry, most of the people who are leading are men. And then, it's like simple enough to share a drink with them and then things would slide.
Oh, so you have to prove yourself more because you're a woman and drink more?
No, it's the drinking thing. It's not because of the gender. It's just the drinking thing.
And because you'd prefer not to drink.
I don't anymore. I did have a drinking problem. That's why I was asking you about starting a podcast about sobriety. I haven't had a drink in a while and I'm trying to moderate it. I'm trying to quit altogether if it's even possible. But just like you started this topic, it's so difficult because I can see how I'm being distanced from my friends. And in order to have a meaningful conversation, it always has to be through drinking. You can't.
So it's like relearning social skills all over again for you,
to have someone open up.
Yeah.
And
then the business impact.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how does that affect young people coming up who reject this style of drinking but want to do well in business?
I think some are caving in, and I think some just, try to play by the book and fail or actually become alcoholics, which I've seen happen a lot among my friends who run a business. So I think I wanted to start a podcast or something to support the community who are trying to become, moderate drinkers or sober, or just start thinking about these things in a healthy way.
Well, like thinking about carving out time to think about them.
Yeah.
Because in a place like this, like it's busy, the city is bustling, and you just I think it's just the nature of going out culture, going out-ness is like you suddenly you find yourself at a bar with your friends because someone else was picking the place, and then you're there, and then they ordered shots and now we're doing that, and there's not a lot of intentionality of going, what do I think about this? What's my plan? How do I feel? Connecting the consequence with the action and going, is that what I want? Not how it works.
Yeah. There's a lot of peer pressure.
Yeah.
There's always one or two people in the group who are like pushing everybody to drink and everybody else just giving.
Yeah. So a podcast is a
let me
great
tell you, I was the person who ordered the shots.
Having gone shopping with you.
Oh my God. Okay.
This checks out.
Am I not the best person to shop with?
You're the best, worst person to shop with.
Yeah.
No, a podcast is a great idea, though. It's cathartic. You can say what you want to say. It's therapeutic because it causes you to think about what you think about. And it's a great way to connect with others. Even if you never do a single interview, you can create a community of people who are trying to do the same thing you're doing.
Yeah.
So please start one and then we can compare notes. It'll be good.
It was so interesting to see how your brain is, the wheels are turning and you can actually hear it because, we went to the countryside yesterday and I can see how you're taking it all in. And potentially turn. I mean, you're in Mongolia doing a podcast. How badass is that? Talk about being
Oh,
resourceful, right?
well,
It's
we
crazy.
have our mutual friend Brianna to thank for that.
Yes,
So,
she's amazing.
because I'm not resourceful in this trip, I'm only responsive.
Mhm.
So, I'm only taking advantage of the opportunities that were given to me and saying, "Yes, please.
Mhm.
I will do that." But
Mhm.
it's been so enriching. I only ever saw things on Instagram going back to social media
Mhm.
of, people with the eagle on their arm
Mhm.
and the countryside, which is amazing.
Mhm.
But seeing the city and like you and Brianna showing us the treasures and the people. It's not just like the stuff. It's not just the I'm going to yoga class. It's
Mhm.
like meeting the teacher who did the sound meditation and her
Mhm.
doing the tea ceremony with us and
Mm.
explaining how she uses her mouth harp to channel her ancestors.
Mhm.
Like it's that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's the less obvious stuff. It's like unlocking the bonus level of a video game where, anyone can play the video game. Anyone can travel to a country, buy a plane
Exactly.
ticket. But when you are able to connect in that way, it unlocks another experience. And you don't have to travel to do that.
Mm.
But I think Mongolia is a special place because it's very normal for a place to be busy, suburban, or a metropolis,
Mhm.
but it's special for it to also be
Mm.
so traditional. And I
Yeah.
think that's what's unique about this place, one of the many things.
Yeah, Bree and I, we don't want our clients, our travelers to only see the touristy things that are so curated and so filtered out. We want to show our clients the real deal,
Mhm.
all the unique and cool places that you never expect to see in Mongolia. That's why I take this job very seriously.
Mhm.
And I go out of my way to, provide for my clients and not provide, but, you know, help them have the best experience here. And it's such a rewarding job. There's so many beautiful stories I hear from people. Another reason why I do this job is because if I decide to travel to those countries where they come from, they would be like, "Come stay at my place."
Oh, yeah, you got a home in Pensacola,
Yeah,
Florida, obviously.
you're gonna regret saying
No, and
that.
I know you're gonna regret it because 'cause I'll be like, "This seashell is called this." I will give you every nerdy nature
Uh,
fact, and you will be like, "Get this woman away from me." And then my husband will give you all of the Civil War information. It's so funny how I don't think people think about tourism in the light of history or
Mm,
tradition or ancestry,
mhm.
but really, you can't have tourism without it.
Exactly. And we have so much of that.
Yeah.
The look on people's faces when they start realizing our culture and our history and, the diversity and all that, it's so rewarding.
It really is, yeah.
And you see people are literally changing their perspective on Mongolia completely.
I
Anywhere.
appreciate you doing this podcast with me.
Thank you for inviting me. This is my first podcast ever.
Yeah, you're killing it. Do you have any final thoughts before we log off?
Not so much as final thoughts. I'm just great. I'm grateful for the experience that we had. And I'm kind of blocking the thought of you and the other girls leaving because you know,
Sad.
it's very sad. I feel like it's only been 2 days with you guys.
Mhm.
But also at the same time, it feels like we've been friends who got together in Mongolia for a girls' trip, right?
It totally feels that way.
Yeah, the bond is like crazy.
We've set the bar.
Yeah, exactly.
But not only has it been good, it's been good for everyone. It's been,
Yeah,
like, fun. It's been more than good.
yeah,
Yeah. So, shout out to Meanwhile in Mongolia.
yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
That's a wrap.
Yeah.